Cool. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Welcome to the first Risk and Assurance meeting of 2024. Woohoo! I'm just going to throw it over to Mike Timmer, who's going to read the council prayer. Thank you, Mike.
Eternal God, source of all wisdom, as we reflect upon all those good things that we enjoy in the city and district, help us to make and keep our community a good place to be for all who live and work here. Grant that through our deliberations and decisions we will provide wise and positive leadership, seek to solve problems effectively and justly, so that with courage and compassion, vision and energy, we may instill our community, aroha and harmony. Amen.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
And lovely to have everybody here. And I'd like to just take any apologies. Do we have any apologies at all? No. So we can move on from that we have no apologies. Any declarations of interest in relation to anything on the agenda? No. Thank you. We'll move on from that. And the confirmation of the minutes of the 7th of December. Everybody, thank you, Jenny, the seconder. Thanks. Thank you, Michael. Cool. That's that bit done. I'd like to welcome Chris Webby. Yes. Yes, sorry. We'll, the minutes of the Risk and Assurance Committee meeting on the 7th of December are confirmed as a true and correct record, a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. That bit wasn't done. Carried. Right, we'll get into the groove. Welcome to Chris Webby, our Director from Audit New Zealand. Thank you very much for being here. I know you got held up in the roadworks coming through, but great to have you here, and we're really pleased that you're here in person. Thank you for the work that you've done on the audit report. You can take it that we've all read it and that we have a perspective from that. We've also talked to you personally about the report, so that's been very useful for us. But I'd like to just ask you to give us a brief overview from your perspective, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. As you said, I'll take the report as read. First off, I'd like to just thank management and council for their work to get to the point of signing the audit report last year. So, it's a lot of work that goes into it. So, thank you. So, from the report, there were two key findings. One was around the statement of service performance. So, we were unable to gain assurance over complaints and response time measures. So that meant that we couldn't gain assurance over completeness, which resulted in the qualification. And then also the other part was the roading revaluation. We were satisfied that the roading revaluation was materially correct in the financial statements, but we made a recommendation just around the process and just actually using actual cost information in the first instance for the valuation. And then if you need to use the CPI, then using that where needed. But the recommendation is just for improvements going forward. And a pleasing note about the report is the amount of closed recommendations from the prior period. So there was 13 closed recommendations, so that's good. So now there's only 5 open, and there's probably a couple that could be closed quite easily, but I'll be able to close them as part of next year's audit. So I think that's a big positive for the council, closing all of those recommendations, because the last thing you want is to have 18 or 20 open recommendations. So definitely seeing improvements in that area, and I'm happy to take any questions about the report or anything else.
Thank you. And yes, noted that all of those closed items, really pleased to see that. And also to David, Mike and the team to say thank you for all the work. It's a good audit report, and we're really pleased to see that. So Mike, is there anything, or David, anything you want to say at this point? The audit report? No? That's cool. Okay, well I'll just open it up for questions. Mike Timmer.
I just had a a question here. It's regarding the 5 outstanding audit points, and I'd like to say thank you to management for, because you've worked really hard on getting the audit points right down, and that's great. I'm really pleased to see that. But there's still 5 outstanding, and they are all, I think, in an area where they're meant to be cleared within 6 months according to audit recommendations. You say in your paper, Mike, that you have an aim of addressing them prior to the 24 annual report audit. Could we possibly say that you will have them done by then? It would be really nice for you to commit to doing them.
Yes, certainly. The aim is to get it done by that time. Now, between now and June is the opportunity we have to get into these. So we'll look at these and other items that are on their outstanding action report. So we'll certainly be focusing on this over the next 2 to 3 months.
Any other questions? Michael.
More of a clarification question. Nothing wrong with this report, but do we get any audit reports for risk factors around process, procedural, cyber, technological? I've noticed a lot of our reports are always based on infrastructure, which makes sense in the past, but as things are changing on, do they come in this kind of report in the future, or do we get more side versions of it?
Those would likely be an individual internal audit report that you would request.
Okay.
Audit New Zealand has auditing against the financial standards and the KPIs in the long-term plan, and the OAG gives them areas of focus which they focus on the audits, which I think is highlighted in the Audit Management Report. Chris, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, and there may be specific points that come up around your information security. So we have our information security auditor, so IS auditor that we have. So if there's anything coming out of that, we will pass it on as well. And sometimes we see good practice that we will share with our clients as well.
That'd be great. So those non-functional audits will start touching on more and more as it gets more important and more things come up as good positive points from other areas.
Yeah, so it all depends on the client and how they're using that information as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the other thing I was just thinking of is that on our work program we have, the deep dives, and we had a deep dive into cybersecurity and the IT sort of system late last year. And each year, DB as the risk manager presents what we'll do internal audits on, and that's in the internal audit environment. What is it called? The atmosphere? Universe. That's right, the universe, and those things that you're talking about will be in there, and we will get the opportunity as we look at what we do want to internal audit over the next year to identify those areas, particularly the strategic risk areas for us. Cool. Mike, did you have another question?
Yeah, sorry, I meant to ask this. The question about the passwords, I know it's probably only minor, but there isn't any comment from management about that. Is that a system problem that we can't do it, or is it just we haven't got around to it, or what is it?
We will be liaising with the IT manager to respond to that, and it will be closed out by the end of this year.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Peter?
Yeah, could you talk to the new recommendations, specifically about the credit cards and the valuation?
Yes. So with regards to the valuation, we're just recommending that as part of the valuation process, because what happens with roading or waters, it's valued on replacement costs, so depreciated replacement costs. So the actual cost to rebuild, say an asset, so for example, if you look outside the road, that road might have been built 10 years ago, but when it gets valued, it takes into account how much it would cost in this day and age to do that road, and then it gets depreciated with the amount of useful lives. So the recommendation is, when you're actually doing the valuation, is to use the most up-to-date actual cost data as part of your evaluation. So what was happening is initially the valuation was done with price movements taken into account since last valuation. So my recommendation is, well, actually you should be comparing that more with actual cost that you are getting with those contracts. So the recommendation is actually just using a bit more cost information from your contracts in the first instance, and then use the price index when required. So that's just around the rolling valuation. And then the coding of credit card expenditure. So that was just around, we weren't able to get the breakdown of the general ledger coding, so we couldn't see where it was coded to in your financial statements. But we were able to actually see the expenditure of those credit cards, and we had no issues with that. But it was, we just couldn't find out where in the general ledger they were coded to. And as you can see, that comment from management, there's a new software in place now, so that should resolve that issue going forward. So as part of next year's audit, we will look at that system when we're reviewing the coding of expenditure. Did that cover the points, or?
And the performance recording of complaints and things. It's more the response from management that I'm after, you know.
I'm just looking for a response. Do you have the response there on the page, Peter, you're on?
Page 31, Mark.
31, thank you.
I have
31.
Just, we got the page?
I have read the report,
Yep.
but I just wanted to make sure that, because it's, the response time was for 21 days, and we're well over that. And my concern is that maybe it's because we're under-resourced staff-wise. So
It was more to do with the way we recorded the complaints in the first place through our contractors and a definition of how to close those complaints. So, and because of that, we couldn't produce the data that audit required to confirm that. So, so that's what we've worked on, make sure the system's in place so we can accurately track that data to measure that performance.
I think page 22 has got the management comment about performance reporting, 4.1. But Chris, you also said that this wasn't unique to Whanganui, is that correct?
Yes, so quite a few councils around have had a qualification in this space. So what was happening in your situation is you kind of had 3 systems in place. So with the complaints, the risk to us is around completeness. So have all complaints being recorded, and then it was a few different systems, so we weren't able to get assurance over that, and then that kind of flowed on to the response times as well, because if you haven't got all the complaints in there, so as per the mandatory measures, then you need to report on the response times. So if we can't gain assurance over the actual complaints, then it flows on to the response times. So as part of the audit, one of our auditors who identified the issue liaised with management around how to try and rectify it going forward. So hopefully this time next year we'll be in a position that we're satisfied that you've got the systems in place. So as I mentioned previously, we're just going to make sure it's for the whole 12-month period, of course, because if we can't gain assurance over 2 months of the year, then won't be able to give the clean audit report on that. But I would make the comment that we were able to identify it was working for the 10 months out of the 12, so we expect this to be closed going forward.
You happy with that, Peter?
sort of. can I ask then that because we couldn't record it, doesn't mean that it didn't actually happen? Yes. So we may have well dealt with the complaint, but just couldn't record that we had dealt with it.
Yes, I'm not saying you haven't dealt with a complaint at all. I'm just saying from my audit, I couldn't gain assurance that it was complete. The population that we were testing from was complete. So, because there was different systems involved, but it didn't come together as one. So I couldn't say if that complaint was there. I'm definitely not saying that any complaints were missed, but there was no audit work that I could do to gain assurance that the completeness of complaints were there.
Okay. No,
So that's more of it. It's more of the recording, not resolving the actual complaint. There's nothing I can do to prove that the population is complete. And when I can't prove the population is complete, there's no amount of audit work I can do to gain assurance over completeness.
thank you.
But yeah, no, I'm definitely not saying that complaints were missed at all. It's just around my audit work, I just couldn't gain assurance that the complaints number was right. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Oh, you've moved it. And a seconder? Thank you, Peter. All those in favour? Anyone against? It's carried. Thank you. So thank you, Chris. Also aware that you're doing some work with us on the long-term plan, and your team are working alongside our team on that. So really appreciate that work. If there's anything you did want to let us know while you're here in the room on that sort of work, happy to hear it right now.
I think it's just, so we started this week. Two of our auditors are looking at some supporting documentation this week, and then the full audit starts next week. As with all of them, they're always tight, so it's really important we work with management. I've been having meetings since August with the long-term project team, so that's been really helpful. So at the moment, we're just working through it, and I don't see any issues at the moment, but if there are any issues, I'll be talking with management throughout. But great. I'm pleased that we've started.
Yeah, that's great, and good to have you working alongside the team. Thank you. That's great. Thanks very much. Have a good trip home. I hope it's a little quicker for you and you don't get stuck in the roadworks. Thank you for all your work. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks. Yes, thank you. We're going to just jump forward because Mike has to present 5.2 and he's just left the room. So Debbie will go to 5.3, the Strategic Risk Top 10 report. Please, just over to you. Oh, great to see the format that you're providing the strategic risks in. I know there's some updating that's required and you've talked about that. And so it's sort of a timing issue, but it's really good to see the nice little dashboard sort of style with everything on it. So just over to you for anything you want to highlight.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is a new way of presenting what used to be a rather clunky 47-page report to you. This is just the top 10, so this is actually a real tester sending this out to see what the feedback is from the committee. What does it look and feel? Does it work for you? Certainly the top 10 is a little bit different in the format. What you'll notice on there is that there is no risk appetite in there at the moment, because that's that work in progress that we're going to be working on in another committee meeting and with ELT. So I'm going to take the report as read and happy to take any feedback around even the colour scheme if it comes to that. So thank you. You'll also note before I finish too that the next lot of update for this will occur once some of the legislation has been enacted through Parliament, and the risk review timetable is looking around the 31st of March, making sure that everything has been able to put through. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Debbie, for the report. Mine, I was flicking through, I just found it on page, it's just a summary of the top 10 risks, and I'm looking at number 7, Strategic Risk 91, political change. And I'm wondering, my query is, or question, or clarification is it political change, or is it, because policy change happens as an ongoing process, whether it's a change of government or not. So I'm just wondering whether the right wording is policy change, including that of a new government, instead of political change, because it's ongoing.
I'm going to hand that over to David, the CE, to respond to that. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll respond to this because I'm actually the risk owner, and I was in the risk register this morning doing some updates to that particular risk. So you are kind of talking around the key issue here that I was wrestling with this morning is the risk described correctly, and is it still relevant? It was written in the context of approaching the general election last year. This morning I actually chose to close the risk down, and we'll be replacing it with 2 new risks, one that focuses on the new policy position for the RMA reform, and one that focuses on the new policy position of the Three Waters reform, which are the 2 substantive consequences of the political change that occurred in October. So yeah, you're right. It's just a matter of timing that I'm a little bit out of sync with updating my risks.
It's great that you were working on them this morning, though.
Always, every day.
That's cool. Thank you. That's good. Thank you. Josh.
Yeah, thank you. My question's along the same lines really, and it's around the appropriateness of the second one on the register around the future of local government. I mean, it seems like there's a bit of duplication there, and also given that I posit that the current government is probably not going to be acting with any real haste on that review, which was of course commissioned by the previous government, that it's probably not a huge risk factor for us at the moment, and that some of those other issues around RMA and Three Waters are probably more appropriate right now.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, agree with you. That's another risk that I was looking at this morning. We'll likely close it out or downgrade the risk rating for all of the reasons that you've just described.
Cool.
It's just been a timing issue really that we haven't. I absolutely had the same feeling when I looked through and felt that number 2 was not the second biggest risk for us at all. So it's great that David and the team will be doing more work on this, and ELT will be reviewing it as going forward and keeping them much more sort of current for us over the year. There are also some that I'd like to, once we get to that sort of point, to be able to take and hopefully in this sort of format through to the full council to share. These are the top 3 major risks, maybe quite regularly. Councillor Peter.
Yes, I have no complaints about the colour scheme, but what I would like to see in it is at the top, enterprise risk management risk owner, and that is following further down the this thing. It says planned additional solutions, and there are no actions or an owner. So can I presume then that the chief executive takes ownership of it, or is that a place for a delegation where he delegates an owner to it?
So are you saying under the action planned additional solutions where there's nobody assigned?
Yes.
Okay.
I can respond to that through the chair. If the risk treatment is tolerate, there is generally no planned additional solutions because we're tolerating the risk. When you treat the risk, there will always be solutions.
So why aren't we treating it then?
Because we've...
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, as Debbie has just outlined, so case in point, page 53 in Diligence, you'll see that there are 3 planned additional solutions, actions, which have my name listed against them. So where we choose to treat a risk to manage its risk level downwards, we identify the actions we're going to carry out, we assign owners to those actions, and then monitor our implementation of them. But at the same time, you may choose to tolerate a risk, some of the political risks around what central government are going to do, tolerate is about all you can do because your degree of influence is so low. So we keep a watching brief, but there may not actually be any specific action that we take that requires a control to be written into the risk register and an owner assigned.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, Mike Timmer?
Yeah, just a brief question. Thank you, Debbie, for this. I think the dashboard approach is really good. See the whole lot in one go, which is great. I've just got something, and it's probably minor, but for me it's important. This is on page 53 of Diligent, page 20 of the risk report. It's the risk of organisational planning. Looking down in the bottom box, planned and addition solutions, you talk about the business cases and analysing benefits realisation, and you use the word should be in both cases. Should be. Should be is a good word, but I kind of like will be. It just says, well, we might do it, but we probably should do it, but you know, if we don't get around to doing it, well, then we don't do it. If you see what I mean. I know it's only pedantic, but it's yeah.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, take the point about being more definitive in the language you reuse, but don't interpret that as a lack of intention. And if you were to look at the full risk register, some of those actions are now marked as complete because we've actually followed through and done. But yes, we will be doing.
Councillor Michael?
Just a point of clarification, the CE mentioned that a risk may not be owned. Just want to clarify that all risks are owned.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I didn't say that risks weren't owned. What I said is if we're tolerating a risk, we may not identify controls and assign owner to a control that doesn't exist.
To the control.
But all risks have an owner.
Thank you.
And Councillor Peter?
Yeah. Sorry for not asking it the first time, but this is the top 10.
Yep.
So there is a risk of getting hit by the 11th one. How can I be assured that the 11th one isn't going to come and get me?
Looks as though I've got this response. What the committee requested was they requested the top 10. So the top 10 is based on the last review. You may well see when you get the next lot, the number 11, 12 and 13 have cycled their way in. The committee will get the full risk register, which was the massive document, every second meeting. So in the meantime, you get the nice coloured abbreviated version, which gives you the top 10. And the top 10 are really the things that matter right here, right now.
And I think a discussion about the top 10, you know, in this committee and what the team are recommending to us are the top 10, we could still say, actually, what about this? There seems to be something out there that's become much bigger in the last week or so. Has that been taken into account? So I think keeping the risk register and the risk strategic risk discussion really current for all of us is important. So Debbie will produce what the team have come up with and all the work that's gone on behind that. But we can certainly open it up in this forum to say, does that feel like the top 10? I guess that's where we started from, with people saying number 2 doesn't feel like number 2 right now in the top 10. And we rely on the management team, for David and the management team, to actually come up with the current top strategic risks for us. But yeah, you've always got to be mindful that, you know, 14 and 15 could jump up, and that's the work that we want to keep developing to make sure that it's very dynamic in this environment. Cool. Okay, can I put the motion then? Oh, sorry, Michael. Oh, you're moving. A seconder?
I can second it and I'd like to speak to it.
Thank you, Kate, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. What a great report. You know, the distillation of the risk, the impacts, the management, the ownership. Yeah, I mean, it's really nice information, really nicely presented. Thank you. And I guess that I'd just make the comment, sometimes we need to be careful what we wish for. So we get a really good report like this, and this allows us to drill down to the could, the shoulds, or the woulds, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but I guess it's also a reflection on the great information that we have before us. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Kate. Michael?
Yes, I want to reiterate the top 10. Great, thank you for your team's work on that. I was able to, in 5 minutes, understand where we are. What I liked about it the most was, I think it was number 8, 9 and 10. I didn't find that risky. It gave me assurance that we have the right structure in place. To Peter's point in terms of number 11 coming and biting me, we could always have, just as a point, top 10 unless there's a severity index of 0.7 and therefore we have 11, 12, 13. You know, it could just be a simple adjustment, but top 10 suits well with me because it made me feel that we really only have 5 to 7 major risks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Debbie, and thank you for those comments. If there are no further comments, we'll put the motion on the screen. All those in favour? Anyone against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Mike, we might move back to the LTP 5.2, the Leading Edge Strategy Refresh Risk, and I note there's an apology from Robin not being able to be here today.
Thank you. This report is just outlining a couple of things with the long-term plan, Leading Edge, and that we are required to include the 3 waters within the long-term plan, which we have spoken to you about before, and we're always intending to do that. And also, as you've also been confirmed from Chris, we're having a consultation document audited, which not every council is deciding to do. There's a number that decided not to, but we're in a good place where we can do that. So that audit has started this week. Couple members on site, and then next week will be the fuller team from audit on site. And so we're expecting 4 to 5 weeks to 4 weeks to get the clean audit opinion, with the final consultation document adopted at the end of a council meeting at the end of March. So happy to take questions.
Yes. David will just make one comment. Yep.
Through you, Madam Chair, just wanted to, I suppose, add to what Mr. Fermore's just said in terms of we made a decision early last year to do the extra work to plan for 3 waters, budget, prepare full 10-year asset management plans, do the infrastructure strategy, even though we were heading towards reform, because we did anticipate this could be one of the outcomes. So it is pleasing from my point of view to sit here and be able to tell you we have a robust LTP. We haven't had to scramble to fit 3 waters in, and I think the team has done an incredible service to the community because of that little bit of foresight to do the extra work up front. I know it's put us in that position where we can choose to go through the audit and not have to fall back on some of the dispensations that have been granted by by central government by allowing us to have unaudited consultation documents. Take pride in doing the job properly, and I think the team have done a fantastic job, so I did just want to acknowledge their hard work. It's been extra, but they've done it really well.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kate.
Thank you. And thanks for that additional explanation. It helped answer some of what I'm wondering about. The line that says councils are able to include water services material in the final plan without reconsulting. Can you just talk me through that? I'm missing a cog, really, I think.
So a number of councils are choosing to have an unaudited consultation process, which may include not including in the consultation document the full impact of the 3 waters. When they come to the final long-term plan, the actual long-term document, that has to include the 3 waters. You don't consult on the final long-term plan document because you've consulted on that through the consultation document. And so that's kind of what that's getting at there.
So, just to make sure I'm understanding, we're going out to consultation with a fully audited consultation document.
Yeah, so we'll go through the standard audit process for a consultation document, which is basically stating that the document is fit for public consultation. That includes the supporting information, which is the financial strategy and infrastructure strategy, particularly those two documents, and our 30-year infrastructure strategy has the full impact of Three Waters in there, which obviously flows through to the financials and the supporting information and impact on rates and debt and so on. Part of the advantage of actually getting consultation documents audited now is the final audit of the long-term plan is a simpler process to go through, as opposed to not going through this audit process right now. Does that answer your question?
If it, this is, on the face of it, it seems to me to be huge. The fact that councils, maybe not us, are permitted to have unaudited consultation documents for the LTP. I mean, that is massive in terms of monitoring the sector, I would have thought, and the veracity of a consultation process. So what am I missing?
Yeah, look, my view's not dissimilar to yours. It's why we've chosen to put ourselves in the position where we could go through a full audit, because then you can have assurance that the consultation that we're having with the community is robust and genuine and meets all of the expected standards, and then have confidence that when you adopt the LTP, it's on the basis of good, sound, robust process. But some other councils will be right now in the process of trying to add Three Waters back into their LTPs because they took it out because of the policy direction of the previous government. They're not going to be able to complete that work by the time they need to consult, so government has created this dispensation that allows them to consult, and then if they need to, add the Three Waters components back into their LTP before they're adopted.
Without consultation?
Yeah. It reflects the level of resources available to many councils to actually complete this piece of work. Given that the consultation document, if you go through the audit process, can take up to 5 weeks to complete. And so not only if the councils can't complete it within a reasonable time frame, the audit itself can't complete the audit. So it's just, as I said, a dispensation given the reality of where councils are at. But councils will have a final audited long-term plan, which will then give the picture, the wider picture of the sector.
So, thank you. My final question would be there, had we not had an auditable long-term plan consultation document, would there have been additional steps to the audit after the adoption?
There'd be additional steps to the audit of the final long-term plan before it's adopted. So part of this audit process in the consultation document is auditing the underlying information, which is the financials, the assumptions, and all those things, which means that when they come to audit the final long-term plan, they don't need to rework that, providing those haven't changed.
Thank you. Can I ask another question? Does that change the cost?
I wouldn't think materially. Well, no, it's the benefit. I think you need to come back to the benefit first. The benefit of having a consultation document that the public can have confidence that is fairly reflects what council is planning to do. The audit provides that assurance. There is a cost to that, but the benefits would outweigh the cost of that. So again, you come back to that. If you didn't have the consultation document audited and you just relied on the final audit, there may be a small reduction in total audit fees.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think, as Mr. Fillmore said, even if there is a small cost, I think having your consultation document audited before you go and have that conversation with the community is highly valuable, because it gives you the opportunity to correct issues before you publish the CD. If you go with an unaudited consultation document and just solely rely on the LTP audit, if your consultation process is flawed, you've missed the opportunity to fix it and you're too far gone to repeat that process. So I think there's a lot of value in that staged approach and having assurance you've got it right before you open it up to the public conversation, and then you significantly de-risk, I think, the final audit of your complete LTP, because you've already had quite a body of assurance up front that the lead up has been robust and the information's correct.
Absolutely accept that. Thank you.
Councillor Michael.
Just a confirmation that the political decisions that could carry the water centralisation forward are not being deliberated right now because we haven't had any timelines.
There will be an assumption in the long-term plan around the three waters that council will be responsible for the three waters for the duration of the long-term plan. That's all we can do right now.
That's fair. Thank you.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll put the motion. Thank you, Jenny. Seconder. Thank you, Kate. Any other comments?
Just very quickly,
Yes.
big thank you for working
Yes.
up the different scenarios before Christmas. Puts us in a really strong situation, so thank you for that.
It's been a significant amount of work, and on behalf of this committee as well, thank you very much for that and keeping us informed around the sort of process too. So appreciate that. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go now to the introduction of the Portfolios, Programs and Projects Management Framework. P3M. Welcome, Lance. Great to see this and the plans coming into being over the next few months. I'm particularly interested, in the role of risk and assurance as we implement this as well. So if you can cover that off as well as your introduction to the paper, thank you.
Certainly. Kia ora, everyone. So firstly, our PMO manager, Trish Taylor-Pope, is on leave. Otherwise, she would be sitting beside me and probably leading this discussion. And going forward, she will be leading this paper as it becomes a regular, perhaps not this paper, but the product of that office will become, part of the product of that office will become a regular at this hui. So that will be led by Trish, but yeah, she's away. So I might not have the in-depth detail that Trish would have, but I'll give it a go. I'll take the paper as read and that you've had a look at the framework. It was going to be with you last year, but for other reasons it was pushed out to now. Some urgency arose with other papers last year. So just for a bit of additional information, more just for your awareness, in fact, other framework are being produced by Tricia. She sets up foundations up for this office. That includes the Benefits Management Realisation Framework, a Project Risk and Assurance Framework, Change Management Plan, Comms Plan, Implementation Plan, and a Training and Development Plan. The Change Management, Comms, Implementation and Training Development is more internally focused, obviously, as we bring the staff across to working in this new way. Probably from the framework itself, you would have noticed the tier classification. 3 tiers, 1 to 3, 1 being highest, 3 being lowest. The risk reporting for those tiers, you would expect generally a tier 1 project, you would get some form of reporting on that as an individual project, as opposed to a tier 3 where it might either be by exception or bundled as per some of the other committees, depending on the focus of those papers. And yeah, there's a bit more I could say around the tier classifications, but I think that's part of the gear change. But you would have read everything in there around that in here, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Michael.
Not any questions, but
I'll just do one then. I have a lot, but I'll just do one. Regarding change management, has there been any thoughts regarding the change management to external stakeholders and their ability to absorb change as a council? Because we do a lot of change. We mentioned this at the last meeting. We're having an internal change management process. Cool. Is there any thoughts around external?
Oh, look, again, Trish would probably be the one to answer that, but I think it will naturally or organically be part of the process.
Yep.
For some externally, they shouldn't notice a lot of difference, other than perhaps council being better organised than in the past, so and more lined up with their ducks, perhaps. But she may have more detail.
Okay, no worries.
David?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think I've understood the councillor's question. Change management is going to be one of the core capabilities that we expect of our project managers. So it's not just about change management as we roll this out and bring staff into a new way of working. If I were to give you an example, the rollout of the new curbside collection services is a project, but it is also a change management program at a population level scale for the whole district, where we need our community to behave differently when they manage their waste. So change management, comms, all of those things are critical to the success of that project, not just can we manage contracts and organise stuff. There's a big human element to that project that needs to be well looked after by the team.
Sorry, supplementary. You mentioned project managers are going to be change managers. Are we going to be hiring a specific expert who can help project managers with change management? And the reason why I say that is because obviously change management is a completely different field to project management. And there's a lot of more empathy with change management than there is with project management.
We're probably a bit fortunate in that Trish is the change manager first.
Cool.
So.
Yeah.
Great. Mike Timmer?
Great. Thank you, Lance, for this framework. I've been asking this for a while, and I'm really pleased that we're moving forward with it. It's really good, and I've read the document, and I think it's really comprehensive. And you guys have done a really good job on it. Like with anything, implementing these things is the proof's in the pudding, and it's good to hear that we've got a really good change management. We're really focusing on that, because if you don't have that properly, it won't work, and clearly you're well aware of that. The only question around it I'd ask is in terms of training, the ongoing training. So you can train all the staff now, but it's really the onboarding. When people come on board to the organisation, have we got a process in place that, that's part of their induction or whatever, that they know they go through what this is all about? So that would be good to hear that you do have that.
Yeah, I know that's in Trish's radar in terms of working with particularly with identifying those key roles where they're likely to be involved in that world, and that would be part of the induction process.
Okay. The question I had was CCOs, CCTOs. I presume this policy doesn't affect them, but I just raised the issue. Had you considered it, and might you consider it?
I don't know if I have an answer. You have an answer for that, David? I'm not sure. I haven't myself.
Through you, Madam Chair, the CCOs are independent, separate organisations that can do their own thing, but absolutely sharing the IP of the framework with them and giving them the opportunity to use it. No issue with that whatsoever.
And my last question was in the closing out part of this. There seems to be, doesn't seem to be a lot about post-project review and sharing that information on how well a project went, and getting that information out to everybody so you don't continually make the same mistakes. So I just found that it was a little bit light on the closeout. The post-mortem. I think it does talk about very briefly, but the post-mortem, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's where you'll find this other framework, the benefits realisation framework.
Yeah, that's what you said at the start.
Should capture that. Yeah. And it's it's another really strong area and focus for Trish as well. That's a big part of how she is going to lead this team at this office.
Great. Thank you. That's all I have to ask on it.
David?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, just for clarity on that last point, we've got two frameworks being developed. Lance has taken the lead with the project management framework. Mike on the business case framework. You could put benefits realisation in either camp. It just happens that my preference was to have the business cases which state the benefits, then also close the loop on did the project deliver the benefits, and I suppose decouple it from the people doing the project. So hence it's in the scope of what Mike is doing. Obviously there's a lot of crossover between those two pieces of work, and the team are coordinating their efforts into a single piece, but as you've heard from Lance, it's firmly on our radar and absolutely will be delivered, but it sits in that framework, not that one.
Cool. Thank you. It's great to have the PMO position in place, and somebody that's got really good experience. Would have been nice to have met Trish today, but I'm sure we will in the future. But that's great. I think that leadership and that sort of role will be really significant going forward. Thank you. So I'll put the recommendation that we receive the report, the P3M framework. I'll move it. A seconder. Thank you, Peter. Any other comments? All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Michael. Sure. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks very much for all the work on that, Lance, and the rest of the team. That's great. We'll look forward to further updates and reporting back. We do have a particular purpose in our terms of reference around having effective risk management and robust financial controls in place for significant projects. So I think this works in really well for us to identify where we should be focusing on some of these significant projects, and this process, that framework that you're putting in place will really help a lot with that. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to 5.5. Mike, the insurance asset selection policy.
Thank you. This item really is about giving the committee members a heads up about what's coming to this committee in future meetings. We last year we adopted a insurance strategy, and in the report I've got the overall objective of that strategy. And the last part of that I've got there, while ensuring that any risk transfer is carried out in a cost-effective and prudent manner that best serves the community. So to achieve that, the strategy outlined a number of work streams. One of those work streams was the asset selection policy, which is basically deciding which assets you're going to insure, and if you're going to insure it, what type of insurance are you going to take out, what type of insurance is appropriate. It may be full replacement, or it may just be demolition. The item lists three broad categories of insurance, and in my words, it's the critical assets, the nice-to-haves, and those that fall somewhere in between that. The theory being that the critical assets you insure, the nice-to-haves you don't insure, and the ones in between is a political decision whether to insure or not. So officers have started working on the material damage policy. We've been going through that policy, looking at the assets, looking at those assets from that perspective. Is this asset critical? Is it needed to deliver a critical service to the community? Are there consequential losses or benefits that council either have to pay or miss out on if the asset is damaged or destroyed for a period of time? So we're going through that exercise, and we'll bring progress on that back to this committee in May with some recommendations. There are some lower hanging fruits that we can make hopefully reasonably quick decisions on. Give you a couple examples. For example, parking meters. We've got the whole lot insured for replacement cost at about $23,000. A type of event that would knock out all of the parking meters would probably flatten Wanganui. And if you get one parking meter destroyed, it's underneath our deductibles, so council has to pay anyway. That's kind of an easy decision. Some assets, if you replace it, is underneath our excess, so again, quite an easy decision. We're looking at other decisions will be more contentious. So, for example, we may have a heritage building which is underutilised and is actually not critical for what we deliver to the community. And if it's destroyed, should we replace it? Don't need to have that discussion now, but those are types of things that we need to, decisions we need to come to and we'll be bringing to this committee. We're also, obviously to make those decisions, there's some groundwork that also needs to be done as well. For example, on a material damage policy, what premiums have we paid since, for example, the June 15 floods, and what have we claimed against that policy for the last 8-9 years? What's the gap between those? What's potential loss for our assets on the MD policy under different scenarios? For example, Cyclone Gabriel probably wouldn't impact our material damage policy much if we haven't got our assets on floodplains. Christchurch earthquake would significantly impact our MD policy assets. So we need to think about those things as well to make decisions, particularly around those fairly large assets that we're recommending actually we don't insure, we take the risk ourselves. The work we're doing or the discussions we're having at officer and management level is actually not unique in Wanganui. I listened to recently reasons for increasing costs in council's costs, and 3 things are coming out all the time: inflation, interest and insurance. So it's not unique to Wanganui. There was a forum last week which talking about this, a couple of councils' experiences. I'm going to a forum on Thursday talking about this as well. So this is quite a large piece of work, but we can start making decisions on low-hanging fruit, I believe, probably next committee meeting, to make recommendations through to council. So happy to take questions.
Thanks for that, Mike. I'm presuming, if I could just clarify, if you're going to bring recommendations back to the next meeting at the beginning of May, then the decisions made at that time will significantly reduce the premium for the 24-25 year. Yes, is that right?
Yeah, our insurance renewal program is 1st of November,
right.
Is when it starts. However, if we make decisions now to remove an asset from a schedule, we can get a credit towards the unspent portion of that premium towards our next schedule.
Okay, cool. Yes. Yes, could and so, the estimate of how much we could be saving, or yep.
I think it's look, it is realistic to talk about dollars because council, as I've said, is under cost pressures. Dollars shouldn't be the overarching factor to drive decisions. However, having said that, the premium for council, I've got an item there, the premium for council went significantly up to $4 million, just core council, in the November 23 renewals. There's no reason to believe that won't increase to 4.6, 4.7 or even higher in the 24, 25 renewals. The reason I say that is we've got some big assets coming online, such as the Sergeant. We are also, along with this, undertaking work on our asset system for property-related assets, which may bring a whole load more assets onto a schedule. On top of that, the replacement costs of these assets go up continually. So 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, not unreasonable to expect that premium if we don't put some action in place. In the long-term plan, we have a budget of 3.75. I do believe that's achievable, and that's something we're aiming towards, although we need to ensure we make prudent decisions for council in the long run in trying to reach that budget line.
Cool, thank you. Thanks, great to have that specifically laid out for us. Mayor Andrew.
Yeah, two questions. Thank you, Mike, for the report. First one is around MWLAS. I'm keen to ask your comment around the effectiveness of MWLAS as being a supplier for our insurance.
So,
not supplier, but manages the process, I guess.
One of the ways councils can achieve reductions in premiums is through going to the market with a mass of assets. So, for example, when we go through to the London market for our Three Waters assets, infrastructure assets, there's 9 councils that join together, which is 6 in the MWLAS region and 3 over Hawke's Bay, that join together to get the critical mass to keep the London market interested and to give us favourable premiums because they're insuring a large body of assets. So that's one of the benefits of being part of the MWLAS collective. We also have the MWLAS collective went out to the market to get to tender for insurance brokers, which obviously, as I mentioned before, Aon won that contract. The members of MWLAS themselves, all of them are struggling with this and trying to get together to see what can we do as a collective to reduce that. So we're continuing our work with this asset selection policy. It was doing our property asset management system. We're doing those things that was outlined in insurance strategy, but also cognizant of can we work with other councils, particularly in WLAS, to help ourselves and the collective. What can we learn from councils outside the MWLAS collective that have gone through this process? I think Wellington has gone through this process, and so we're trying to learn from lessons from them, what worked well for them.
Okay, no, thank you. Supplementary to that, does it make any difference that we're a medium risk earthquake prone area compared to Palmerston North and Hawke's Bay, which are high risk? Do we cross subsidise?
When we provide our schedules to the London markets as a collective, they look at the risk profile, not just of everything combined, but individually as well. And in doing that, they then come up with the Aon through the modelling has come up with what they believe a maximum probable loss across the region would be for the MWLAS. We've had that done for MWLAS and also for council. So I don't believe we are materially affected by that, but given also we have a river, so we have other risks areas in our factor that others may not have as well.
Fair enough. Okay, second question is more specific around on page 33. There's reference to the Sergeant Gallery rebuild, which will significantly increase the replacement value of that asset. My clarification from you is that it's basically been strengthened and it's got a new build attached to it. Would that not then neutralise or the overall cost?
The cost of the Sergeant on our MD policy, which is what it's priced on, a premium's priced on is around about $20 million. Now that was the cost of replacement prior to the work that's been done. While the contract, while the reconstruction or work's been done there, the insurance is through the contract works insurance. It's not through a material damage policy. Once that's completed and the contract works insurance expires in around about June, I think it is, the replacement cost of that building, which is assuming we will want to insure that for full replacement cost, 60, 70, $80 million. That will then push the replacement cost from 20 million on an MD policy up to 70, $80 million higher premium. That's what I meant by that there.
Right, so is it just is the insurance paid on replacement cost, not on whether it's strengthened or, because you could have a $20 million building that's earthquake prone versus a $80 million building that's been earthquake strengthened?
The part of our details that we provide through to the insurance market is details around earthquake prone or not. Obviously a building which is very low rating will carry a higher premium if there's for earthquakes for that type of risk as opposed to a fully earthquake strengthened building. Regardless of that, still going from a $20 million number on an MD policy for the asset to a $80 million, whatever the number is, it's a significant uplift in the number on there. So while the unit rate may slightly decrease because the new building is earthquake strengthened, overall the premium will go up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. A critical part of this would be your risk appetite. So, as an example, I would only insure my car for a third party, and my wife would fully insure it for replacement. So how are you judging your risk appetite?
Look, there are a number of streams of work going on at the moment that will come eventually to this committee. One is Council's overall risk appetite. Having said that, part of insurance risk appetite is how much risk are you prepared to put on your balance sheet? How much capacity do you have and how much are you prepared to take? So while it'd be very nice to follow step A through to Z and do that stream of work, some of these are working in parallel because I think, as I said, some low-hanging fruits, I believe we can make savings in that now, and some of the other more complex decisions will require more information around what you're talking about, around balance sheet capacity, all those sorts of things. What is the risk for a particular asset, and so on.
So is that then management's decision or council's decision?
It's the risk appetite is while management will have a first go at that, effectively it's council's decision, and whether to insure an asset or not to insure an asset, which is risk transfer, is council decision. This committee, management will make a recommendation through to this committee, and this committee will make a recommendation through to council for council to make the decision.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, we've had some internal discussions briefly around this, and absolutely it's going to be recommendations from management to council to make the decision. Whether it's within delegations of officers or not, I think those decisions are probably so material. I'd want full visibility of what was being done by council, because the opportunity for retribution post-event, if you think we made the wrong call, is too great. So recommendations only from management, decision is yours. You get to set the appetite when you choose to accept or otherwise our recommendations.
But it would be prudent for management to be very conservative. So the recommendation...
No, through you, Madam Chair, being overly conservative is also not prudent. because there's a cost to being conservative in terms of overrating our community by over-insuring. So there needs to be an appropriate balance. We'll make some recommendations on that principle basis, and then obviously it's over to you as elected members to decide whether we've got that balance right or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for this paper. We have seen this before, and I must say, I'm sorry to say this, but I'm disappointed that we haven't done action this earlier on, because this has been ongoing work, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that there's so many things that you have to do in council. There's so many fires you have to fight, and this is just one of the many, and it's obviously becoming very important now because, as Mike said, it's insurance, inflation and interest, and insurance is a real problem for everybody. So really good that we're doing something about it. Quite like to get a time frame when all of this stuff's going to happen. You're talking about bringing something in May. That seems pretty quick to get it all done. I just wondered if that's only a part of it, I guess. Did you want to answer that bit first, or?
What you'll get in May will be a part of it. As I said, I believe there is some low-hanging fruit that doesn't take much analysis, take some but not much amount analysis to make recommendations through to council. Listening to these forums and going where I'm going, talking to other councils, I want to be open-minded about lessons they've learnt and what they have required to make prudent decisions. I don't think all the information can be gathered to make a complete recommendation of all the assets and material damage policy by May. I need to be open about that. For example, if management recommended to insure the Davis Library but recommended not to insure the Alexander Library, because in management's view you may not need two big library buildings, that's quite a big decision to make. You need to have information around that to be comfortable to make recommendations through to council. We're aiming, obviously the renewals for the 24-25 is from 1st of November. I would like to have the bulk of the assets on the MD policy decided on for that. I'm cognizant that post the MD policy, we've got to then cast our mind to the Three Waters policy, which requires the same decision-making process for that.
Okay, thanks for that. Just another question. Mayor Andrew raised a good point about the quality of the assets, and he used an example of one that's earthquake prone versus one that's new, and how that might impact our insurance. Makes good sense in terms of we tell the insurers that and they look at it. How good is our data to be able to give that information to the insurers? But not only us, because remember we're in with MWLAS, and how good is their information? Because at the end of the day, if we don't have really good information to give the insurers just fill it with premium. That's how they operate. They go to the lowest common denominator. If they haven't got good information, they will just fill it with premium. So a really good way, and from my experience in dealing with this, is to make sure you get that data really, really good. So has there been something that's been going on with the NWS to really lift that information that we're giving to insurers?
Yeah, so Aon for a while now has been emphasising that point to the MWS members about the quality of the information for exactly what you said. I can't speak for other MWS members. For ourselves, the two large pieces of work that came out of the strategy was what's in front of you, the asset selection policy. The other one was around our asset system and recording of our particularly property assets. So that piece of work has started, and through that we are improving the information we have on assets. Okay. And it's also not just improving the assets for information for the sake of maintaining the assets. It's capturing the data that's required for insurance purposes, which is slightly different to the information that's required for accounting standards, for example. So that's working alongside this as well.
So just to, I'm getting into the detail here, I'm sorry, but it's probably more management than it is governance, but I think it's important. For example, would you have a sheet on each big asset that you have and a picture of it and detailed its age and its what its NBS is and what you want to insure it for and what the valuation? Do you have a sheet for each asset like that that you can show the insurers and say, you know, this is a building that we've got. You know, we've got it above the MBS. We think it's in really good order. Blah blah blah. So the insurer can look at it and think, oh, okay, I understand the portfolio now. I can see it all, and I understand it, and then they can make a good assessment.
Through you, Madam Chair, what Mr. Timmer has just described there is what we're aiming for. I can't say that we've got that for all of our assets at the moment. We'll have it for some. But we do have one of our strategic priorities is a total overhaul of our asset management systems in the above ground space. The roading and three waters spaces is already quite robust. Sarah O'Hagan is leading that project, but the outcome will be probably what you've just described and some. The task or the goal that I've set for Sarah is that we're compliant with the ISO 55000 standard for asset management systems, which goes into quite a lot of detail around the stuff that you've just described. So we are onto it even if we haven't got a complete picture at the moment, and as we improve the data, that'll be shared with our insurance providers with the goal of managing down the cost premiums.
Right. And just one other last question. It's more a case of me and looking at responsibility of this committee. In terms of what we're doing here, it's quite significant in terms of how we are insuring our assets. And by not insuring some, you know, the community might be a little uncomfortable about it if an event occurred and they didn't know about it. So I just wanted to get some comfort that in terms of our LTP, that we are, that the community will be we may consult on it, we may not, we may have it in the LTP. I'd expect that we would. So when if there's an event, the community doesn't say, oh, we didn't realise that you were doing that, so, or we didn't realise that they didn't realise that we were doing that. So I just wanted to get some comfort around that.
So through the long-term plan, we're not identifying which assets we're insuring, what we're not insuring. We have a key assumption in that, and the key assumption is that we can purchase insurance in a cost-effective and prudent manner. So we can obtain insurance and purchase it in a cost-effective manner. The fact that this workshop is in the public, this meeting is in the public, and these decisions are made in public, is what gives the information through to the public.
Through you, Madam Chair, because I know you and I have exchanged a few emails, Mike, on this one. So, as Mike said, the global decision in setting the savings target for the insurance premium in the LTP in of itself isn't significant. But then as you go, individual decisions or individual assets will need to be assessed for significance, and then the community well informed as decisions are made, but they'll happen as you go, rather than it being a global upfront thing.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you very much for that. This is a really big, important topic, and it just feels to me like it's going to be sort of iterative and progressive as you bring more information to this committee. We're going to need good time to discuss and understand and know what we're then recommending to the full council. So we need to think about how we do that going forward. But on our work plan, I think we have this for every meeting so that it becomes very much a sort of sense of discipline to keep going with this particular process. But thank you for the discussion, and the questions and the answers have been really good. Kate, I'm just aware that you have your red light on.
I just wanted to move and then speak to the item.
That's cool. So Kate's moving that we receive the report on the update on the insurance asset selection policy, and Councillor Peter will second it. Kate?
So just speaking to that, yes, it is a really important issue. The bit that I think is missing and I think it rests with councillors, and that is to do, we've talked for a long time about doing a risk appetite session, and that's already been brought up in this discussion. I think rather than, well, I don't know, I'd be interested in the merits of a discussion about an iterative approach of low-hanging fruit off first. I just wonder if we were a little bit more strategic about it. The councillors were well informed and understood what their risk appetite was, whether we wouldn't be better off to go into the discussion with that as the underlying sort of basis, and then we work through quite rigorously and yes, take the low-hanging fruit, but perhaps be a little bit more thoughtful about it than that. So, like what I'm suggesting is not a, I think this is a really good path, but I think that we need to ready councillors to understand, as a collective, to understand what we're facing here, and that this is actually a way that we could save some money, some serious money, going, you know, year on year. So I just wonder if, yeah, we shouldn't do that risk appetite work and, escalate it.
We were planning to bring the risk appetite work to this meeting, but the timing just didn't work. It was always on our agenda for this meeting, but we've had to push it to the May meeting. So what we will get at the May meeting is management's recommendation around, we've got an existing risk appetite, because I remember seeing that a few years ago. We'll be bringing an updated one. And so what we will be doing at that point is getting that management's recommendation of the risk appetite and some maybe low-hanging fruit or some ideas about what the change we could make in insurance. And I'm wondering whether that doesn't give us the strategic sort of level that we'd be looking for in the risk appetite, but also some practical example of here's something that we could do right now within that would actually give you some savings that we could take to full council.
Sure, I'm not discounting that, but I'm, like, we're talking this committee, and I'm talking council, council as a collective. Because ultimately we need our colleagues to agree if these are material decisions.
Absolutely.
So, all right, I'll ask the question a different way. How are we going to bring along council as a collective on this journey? Maybe it's a question for the Mayor, and we can take it offline.
And it is a bit more of a discussion around.
Respond to it if you like.
Oh, thank you.
So we have a mini governance review on Thursday, and one of the items on there is a learning and development framework, if you like. And if it's not on there already, my suggestion is that we add that particular item onto our learning and development journey. I think it's something where you can't just turn up and expect people to know. So it needs some kind of intervention to help bring people on that journey through some training of some kind.
Yeah, because it feels like it needs some dedicated time and professional support to actually understand what the risk appetite does mean, and then some practical examples of how you're sort of implementing some of it. Yeah. So that would be really good if we had it on that learning and development list, I think, for the full council. Yeah, great, thank you. Thanks very much, Mike. I always knew it was going to be a big, item. So have we moved and seconded? Yes. Any other comments? Mayor, Andrew, did you have something else?
Oh, no, next.
All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried, thank you. Okay. Debbie, the Risk and Assurance Workshop report, please.
Thank you. Through the Chair, last year we participated in a workshop to really consider what good looks like and to take the forward direction for this committee. I'm actually going to take the report as read. It's a little bit lighter weight than the topic you've just had previously, but it sets a strategic direction and gives some considerations for this committee. Thank you to Chair Susan for her input into this, and really it is a direction setter. We've talked a lot today about risk appetite, insurance, decision making and everything else. It all comes back to that risk word. It all comes back to being comfortable with making some strategic decisions. So I'm going to take the report as read. You will note in there of anything that you read in this report is goal 1. Goal 1 is the next 2024 to 25 taking a more strategic approach. So again, take the report as read and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
That's great. Any other? No. I was just thinking that we would turn this into a bit of a strategy going forward. I've been talking about this for a while, but we've got a couple of goals there. I think there's another one, and I've actually got some ideas about some measures just for us, as a committee, of what success might look like. So hoping to bring that back probably in May. But this was really just to try and distill that really useful conversation we had, highlight some areas that we can make some progress on. It's not our work plan. These are things that we want to work on rather than in, if you know what I mean, just to make to sort of continuously improve in this committee. So Jenny's already moved the motion that we receive the report. If I can have a seconder, please. Thank you, Kate. And all those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. We'll have a break at 2:45. We're going fine for time. Debbie, back to you for the internal controls policy assurance.
Thank you. Through the Chair, I'd like to present this report and acknowledge the positive approach that we've taken to making a lot of our policies current and the continued work of the wider team to make that occur. I'm happy to take the report as read and to answer any questions if necessary. Thank you.
Any questions? Mayor Andrew?
Yeah, look, I see a lot of these in most mature organisations, and what I often don't see though is when you come in as a new staff, you do an induction and you go through all the policies and you tick them all off. There are some critical policies though that need reminding from time to time. If you've got a staff member that's been here for 25 years, they may have seen it on their induction, but they don't ever see it again. What can you advise us what their refreshment approach is so that all staff are kept aware of policies?
Certainly, through the Chair, we have an internal control program called ICAT, an internal control assessment tool, which goes out every quarter, and it's actually split into 4 quadrants, which over a period of 12 months basically covers off most of our core policies, and it's done on an assurance basis. So that means that staff actually capture whether it's an update to a policy. It also captures our longer term staff who may be in an area who may not be exposed to this all the time. So the ICAP process was introduced not long after I first started here in 2019. So it does capture quite well, I believe, most of our policies and requirements of staff. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, just to add to what Debbie summarised there, Catherine Dudden, our Group Manager of People and Transformation, has got a programme of work ahead of herself on the performance framework for the organisation. That includes our learning and development processes, and we've had specific conversations around reviewing and updating how we make sure we roll out policy really well and communicate and train people, and the refresher training is going to be a key component of that. So whilst Debbie's given you a good summary of what we've got in place at the moment, you can expect us to be strengthening that and working on it over the next year.
Thank you. My question's around the very first item, which is one of Catherine's, the protected disclosure. This one's been hanging around for quite a while. I see it pop up each time. And like, is there a date when this is going to be sorted? I see it's with legal at the moment, but when can we expect it to be sorted? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Can I just, Catherine, it was last reviewed in 2017, which is ages ago. Is there significant, a legal change in the policy that could be putting us at risk, having not updated it? Thank you.
Not as such. However, there is a process that is missing for us as an organisation. I think I did explain this last time in regards to having an independent organisation where if someone is going to whistleblow, that they have that ability to do that and it's not handled directly in-house, because that kind of contradicts the process. So I'm looking at Incident Response, who did our review for our ICT situation that we had, to help us with that process. So it's just formulating that and implementing it within that policy to make sure that happens, and staff understand how that process works and give them that level of surety that if a situation does occur, that they are well protected and supported through that process.
Okay. So I think Jenny was specifically sort of asking for a date. You're saying a couple of months, so at our May meeting we could see this having been finalised?
Yeah, I'll make sure that occurs.
Thank you. Great. And really good to see the progress on here. We do acknowledge the amount of work that these take, but they're much more up to date now than they certainly were when we started this process, so thank you. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Mike Timmer has moved it and Kate has seconded it. Any other comments? All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. Right. The Chief Executive's due diligence report.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is a repeat of a report that I keep on the agenda reasonably consistently. It just gives you an overview of the activities that I'm doing as the officer as defined by the Health and Safety at Work Act. You'll see it's a relatively brief report just by nature of the fact that I've been producing these quarterly, and the timing of this meeting cycle plus my annual leave during January has eaten into the actual time on the job this quarter. That said, a lot of the focus has been on the long-term plan, in particular making sure that we are making capital investments that are needed to address health and safety issues. Some of those would be the parallel taxiway at the airport and the isolation facility that we ought to have at the Pound. And then also making sure that our ability to deliver the plan in a well-managed way from a resourcing point of view without putting undue pressure on staff and those kind of things is all factored into our planning. As you'll see, we're also making progress towards repeating our organisational culture survey, which will give us some fresh insights into how our staff perceive our leadership and management in the health and safety space. And that will also give us something to reference back to the previous survey that was carried out in November 2022 to make sure that what we've been doing has been effective and hopefully give us insights into where we need to focus our efforts next. There's also a comment in there that I had health and safety site visits planned and that I would give a verbal update on those at the meeting. So been to the airport, had a look around the new runway and a good discussion with the teams there about the case for the parallel taxiway. some of the issues and risks that we're managing in the interim period, and having some assurance that whilst we need that new infrastructure at the airport, we do have things well controlled at the moment through management practices and processes. And then also a good discussion with the Unicom operator around their day-to-day processes and the risks that they are party to managing on our behalf in terms of providing information to the air traffic that's using the airport. Overall, really pleased to hear the conversation from the staff at the airport. I certainly left with assurance that we were making the right investments through the LTP, and that we had a capable and competent team doing the job there. In particular, I would note that some of the management changes that have been made by Sarah and her team, Sarah's the chief executive of the airport joint venture, in regard to resourcing seem to have had really positive impacts. So simple things like bringing on the ground maintenance crew as staff rather than contracting out has improved the quality and consistency of that service. And similarly, the changes to the Unicom operator and getting the additional resource in there on staff rather than contracted with contractor backups means that we're much more robust and reliable in that space as well. So those are all positive takeaways from my visit there. Similarly, visit to the animal pound, a good conversation with the staff there. We had the recent incident where one of our animal management officers was bitten by a dog, so we had a little bit of a discussion around the learnings from that incident post the investigation. And then some good discussions around, again, their day-to-day risks that they are facing. The biggest one being the isolation facility, so that we can properly manage animals coming into the pound that may be infected with things like parvo, isolate them so that we don't spread it to the rest of the population in the pound. A much needed facility. Again, I left with confidence that we were investing in the right things and that we didn't have any material gaps in our investment program, with the exception of the security fencing around the pound itself. I've given the team leader and our compliance manager the opportunity to go and do a little bit of research around upgrades to the perimeter fencing. One of their issues is they have in the past had break-ins where it's a chain link fence. People may be going in to try and get their dogs back, those kind of things. But given they operate at all sorts of hours and they work on their own, one of their protocols they have at the moment is when they arrive at the pound, particularly in the evening or at night, they have to do a full lap of the perimeter to make sure that there's been no obvious breach of the fence and that it's actually safe for them to go in the facility and there won't be somebody else in there that we're not expecting. I think we can better manage that risk by making the facility a little bit more robust, and I don't think it'll come at a huge capital cost, so we're going to investigate that and go from there. But overall, 2 really good visits, and great to see our staff being very proactive and really engaged in the whole business of health and safety. And then finally, the report just talks to the health and safety incident report. From my point of view, pleased to see that we're following through with the CHASN's recommendations around incident reporting, having a proper methodology to structure interviews, and then being broad in our findings and not just focusing on the people failures, but also what are the environmental and organisational factors that contributed to the incident occurring. Make sure we get proper, robust learning from those incidents, and it also contributes to building on no blame culture when our people can see that we are looking to genuinely improve the organisation, not just apportion blame. So I'll leave it there, take questions.
Thank you, David. Thanks for all your work in this area, and It must be reassuring, I would imagine, for staff to see you out there in those sorts of environments as well, interested in, the health and safety and just that whole engagement, which is great. So thank you for that. Any questions, comments? We're going to get a full Chairs NZ update report to the next meeting on those sort of high risks out of that report, so just the progress that's been made. That's on our work program, so that'll give us some reassurance about the sort of action that you've described in here, and the progress being made. So that will be great. Thank you. Any other comments? No.
Happy to move and then comment.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Jenny. So Jenny will move. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Peter. And comment.
Yeah, no questions on this one. It's just a comment that, thank you for the information. It's really excellent, and it's good to know that this is all happening. It gives us a lot of assurance, so thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, all those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried, thank you. Now, Olivia, we're going to move to the Health and Safety Wellbeing Information Dashboard Report. We're going to do that before we have a break, because last meeting Olivia turned up and we had a break. So welcome, Olivia, and we'll move to your item and then we'll have a break this time. Thank you for your report. If you'd just like to, you can assume that we've read it, but please feel free to highlight any areas for us, and then we'll open it up to questions. Thanks.
There we go, we're good now. I'm read, we must be good. Thanks very much. Afternoon to Madam Chair, committee members and councillors. Happy to take my report as read. Very similar report to what you will have received last time, of course updated for November, December and January. I have noted the key information there. Number one for me was that the incident reporting has significantly improved, although Splash Centre does take up quite a lot of that when it came online for us. It's certainly not the whole amount of the increase, and the fact that people are reviewing and there are conversations happening makes me feel that those discussions are really valuable and that they are continuing the health and safety line throughout council.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on the report? Oh, thank you. So Peter has moved that we receive the Health and Safety and Wellbeing Information Dashboard. I'm happy to second it. And any comments?
Yeah, thank you for the report. It's great to see the improvements. And one risk, though, is that next time you report, we may have the break again.
Point taken.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Kate?
I didn't quite have the opportunity to ask a question, Madam Chair, but that was probably because I'm getting a bit slow and tired. So can I ask a question?
Yes.
And it's around the incidents of threatening behaviour and the rollout of training. I think additional safety and security training began in September last year and is being rolled out throughout the organisation over the next 6 to 9 months on a needs and risk basis. I was just wondering if you could talk to us a bit more about that.
Sure.
I particularly want to understand the on a needs and risk basis and how it all happens.
Okay.
And how we can be assured that it's happening in a timely fashion.
Sure, I'll give you a little bit of background just before we get to that. So at the moment, our at-risk staff and those people who are customer-facing or are public-facing, they already get de-escalation training as part of their onboarding. The new training that we're rolling out is more of a, I guess it's an in-your-face training. It's a, what will I do? What are my initial responses if I am faced with a threatening situation? So it sits alongside the de-escalation, but it's more about what am I going to do actually in this situation and what's my response and how can I feel comfortable and confident in my response, and how can my team feel comfortable and confident in my response. So that training started September last year because of the risks, or the increased risks that our staff were facing, and the needs basis is those people who have been identified as being at higher risk of facing those situations, which is, as David's already noted, our pound staff, our library staff, our customer service staff, compliance staff, those people that are far more likely to encounter those threatening situations.
Thank you.
So, Lance, you've been coordinating a lot of the work with the contractor and the drills. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I guess, so we're rolling it, it's obviously started with customer services, but it is going out across the organisation. It hasn't reached all parts yet, but it's a leader-led thing, so we've gone through a bit of a process of training the trainers, if you like. So we want this, it's a bit of a cultural shift, so we want the team leaders to own it, so that, you know, once a week during smoko, or when they get an opportunity, they can just run through a couple of drills and just build that confidence. And a big part of that confidence, is the empowerment. So this is about empowering them to actually make a call and go, you know what, I'm not putting up with this, and I've been given I'm empowered to make a decision on it. I don't have to wonder, do I have to check with the boss or check with someone else first, you know, but also knowing that their mates have got their backs as well. So it's about taking care of each other in that moment before the other backup might arrive, the police or whoever it might be, recognising they don't just pop up out of a bottle. So.
Fantastic, thank you. I also wanted to ask, so we've had threatening behaviour, and then in, was it January? Yes, January, there was no incidents of threatening behaviour. Now, I get it, you know, the numbers are low. I mean, they should be zero all the time. But my question from that is, how can we be sure that these instances continue to be reported?
So for January, because I looked at the reporting as well and said, oh, what's going on here? This is an interesting month. I rung around those departments that are normally experiencing that, just to make sure that there hadn't been anything that wasn't reported, and that the incidents reporting was correct.
Cool. Can you overlay like near misses? Like, in how do we know that the training's being effective? So
as the training
or the
rolls,
de-escalation.
Yeah. So the de-escalation training is just normal training, and we wouldn't necessarily monitor what that looks like. But once we overlay a new session of training, the QRIS training, then we can start to monitor what that looks like. I'm not sure that we would ever get those incidents down to zero, but we can certainly monitor what happens after the actual incident. How did we deal with it, and what was the outcome?
Fantastic work, thank you.
Can I ask a very simple question as well, Madam Chair? Thank you, since somebody else did it. Property damage. Is that private or public property damage? Because it seems very low if it's public.
Those are incident reports that come to me that are council property damage.
Okay, so that seems very low. Is that not low?
It may be low. I only have what comes to me as an incident of property damage. So I think for the ones you're looking at, they were shower heads at East Pool.
Right.
Through you, Madam Chair, important to remember this is the context of a health and safety incident or near miss. It's not vandalism at large, so you don't expect, you know, if someone's put a brick through a bush shelter, it's not going to appear in this report.
That's where I was kind of going with it, because I thought maybe it was private property damage, which is actually a lot worse.
If one of our contractors crashed a car, or one of our staff crashed a car and knocked a lamppost over, that's property damage. It would be in here. Somebody vandalises one of our assets, that's not a health and safety incident, that's just vandalism, and it's dealt with separately.
Yeah, and like the hundreds of graffiti on the floor.
Yeah, all of those things are excluded from this report because they're not health and safety relevant. They're vandalism.
Yeah, just vandalism. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So we had moved and seconded, and thank you for the comments. We're just a bit quick off the mark there. So All those in favour? Aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you. We'll have a 10-minute break now. Thank you. Thanks very much. And we're up to 5.10, the Legal Compliance Statutory Assurance Exception Report. Over to you, Debbie. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is the second iteration of this report. You received the first one at the last meeting. I'm going to take the report as read and happy to answer any questions on the report. Thank you.
Great to get this and to see progress being made, and I guess shining the light on it so that we can see that progress, but also the light keeps, shining for other people who have some responsibility for these areas as well. So any questions, comments? No? Does anybody like to move that we receive the report, the legal compliance? Thank you, Mayor Andrew, and thank you, Josh, for seconding. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you, that's carried. Good work, thank you. And Debbie, back to you, the assurance activity summary.
Thank you. Through the chair, this is a report that has been requested by the chair just to give you a wraparound of the activities that have been happening across the wider risk management space. You'll notice in there the same graph as in the recent Audit New Zealand report, but more importantly the comment in there that the full review of the organisational improvement, previously called the corrective actions, will be completed by management. We did say late February, but time has sort of got away on us a little bit, but it'll be certainly done before the next meeting. And we were actually waiting for the finalisation of this report and a couple of other items, so you'll have that. Briefly, I responded to Mayor Andrew's question around ICAT, so again it is detailed in there, the process that we're working through in this particular quadrant. And also noting in here the Strategic Risk Register review. You've had the top 10 this time round, and the review's happening during this month with risk owners, and again in the May meeting you'll have an update of that reporting. And of note in here, the internal audit program, we've gone out to market and we're just tying up the last of the little bits and pieces, and again reminding the committee of the audit topics that were signed off at an earlier meeting, of the date that I can't recall at this point, but these audits will be completed by the 30th of June. So happy to take the report as I've just summarised as read and answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions at all? No, thank you for the update, Debbie. I'll move that we receive the report, the assurance activity report, and Kate will second that. Any comments?
Yes, very
Yes, Kate.
briefly. Thank you. Thanks for the ongoing work.
Yeah. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried, thank you. And then Debbie, well, really for all of us, the committee work program, but just maybe just highlighting some of the areas that we've, got in the work program.
Thank you. Through the chair, this report is actually dynamic. It depends on what the committee wants at different times, and there will be times when items are moved for different reasons. Probably the key things that you'll note in here is we are continuing to get the LTP leading edge strategy risk reports. Legal compliance assurance, as I've just touched on before. Really, there's nothing much else in there that I can comment on, and I'm just going to take the report as read and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any comments or questions about the work program? Mayor Andrew.
It's probably more of a question for the Chief Executive, and that is how passionate are Wainganui District Council employees about risk and yeah. No, I actually say it in a little bit of a jest, but also quite seriously as well, because Debbie, you appear very diligent and dedicated to this, but it is actually at the end of the day a whole of council role. So, hence my question.
Can I answer?
You're the chair.
So I'm very interested to know about what everybody else thinks about risk, what they understand about risk in relation to their role. And in fact, last week I talked with Catherine and with David about adding a question into the organisational engagement survey that's due to go out. And what we've decided to do at this point is not add a question, but take a particular pulse survey at a point in a few months' time, outside, not to muddy the engagement survey, but a pulse survey when it feels like it would be the right time. We were thinking we could bring the questions back here in May, 3 or 4 questions that we might ask to different parts of the organisation, so maybe management and staff, about their risk, understanding of risk and how it relates to their role. So what I'm really keen to get is like a benchmark, and then we can say, actually in another couple of years we'll go out again and just ask again and see if we've made progress. David really likes this idea.
Did you want me to comment on that?
Yes, please. So I've been interested in doing this for a while, and I thought it would be, when we redid the engagement survey, but a conversation with David and with Catherine, it sort of felt like it would be better if we did it separately, and when we've got the right sort of framing for it and the right timing, given the implementation of the LTP, and have got the engagement survey done. Yeah, David.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. David likes this idea because it was David's idea, I think, was the point you were making there, wasn't it? Look, we are about to do another staff engagement survey, but we do want to preserve the ability to benchmark back to the previous one, so we're trying to keep consistency with the questions. But with the new Ask Your Teams tool, it does give us the opportunity to do more frequent, smaller pulse surveys where we ask 3 to 5 questions on a particular area that we want to pick the scab off of without getting survey fatigue amongst our staff, because we're asking them to fill in questionnaires of 30, 40, 50 questions at a time. So the risk one is a good candidate to be the first pulse survey in a few months' time, and I think that'll probably help answer your question in a definitive way rather than me freestyling an answer right now, Andrew. So I'll avoid doing that. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Kate.
So can I ask a question of the Pulse survey? So if I'm a member of staff and I answer a question honestly, how trackable is your answer?
Catherine? Oh, did you do it? Yeah. Thanks, Catherine.
Okay, so the Ask Your Teams platform that we're using, you can't track a staff member through their IP address or any such way. What we can set up is a different types of demographics within our organisation, so it's exactly the same thing we do with our health, safety and wellbeing survey that's going out at the moment. So we have that level of reassurance from Ask Your Teams that that's not a possibility. If we have a verbatim comment section, that is where if a person identifies themselves as Joan or Jim or whatever, that's when we can actually identify a staff member. So we actually give staff that kind of warning or understanding before we go out with our surveys that they should consider that before they put anything in a free comments space.
Right. Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Jenny.
Happy to move and then comment.
Yes, so Jenny's going to move that we receive the report, the Risk and Assurance Committee work programme. I'm happy to second and open for comments.
Just responding to the Mayor's question, and not to the passion that people have about risk, because I think that's an interesting connection of words anyway, but my anecdotal experience of what's happened in the organisation over the last 4, 5, 6 years, it's moved light years. I mean, I know when Debbie arrived, Debbie became risk, and all risk was Debbie, and it's like, no, Debbie's a risk expert, if you like, but everybody should be dealing with risk, and it took a while for that to actually filter out through the organisation, and I think it's happened. I mean, it's an ongoing thing, but so I'm really pleased with the progress. I don't know that they're passionate about it, but they're certainly far more aware about.
Engaged. Thank you, Jenny. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Debbie, I'd just like to thank you, based on Jenny's comments too, for all your work that you've done, and where we're at today is, we really have moved a long way forward. So, yeah, thank you for your reports and the work you've done. Cool. Okay, we're now going to put the motion that the public be excluded from the following part of the proceedings of this meeting, namely those listed on page 59 of the agenda. Can I have a mover for that, please? Kate? And a seconder. Thank you, Jenny. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Thank you.